I actually prepped for this Final Fantasy XIV collab rerun before the Final Fantasy IV collab came out because I thought that's when we were going to get Final Fantasy XIV based on the Japan schedule. So I had a whole PowerPoint made for these vision cards and I did not like them that much. And now that the meta has changed a bunch, we've seen Kain introduced, we've seen Dwayne introduced, and now we've seen all these dark teams and variants popping up here and there. All of a sudden, these cards look way better to me, and my review has totally changed. So I think that's a really cool indication of how things can change in more of the visions and how things are never set in stone. But just keep that in mind when we're looking at these cards, that, you know, these looked bad at one point, they look good now, and that's kind of interesting. Thank you to warofthevisionscalc.com for all the information that they provide for these videos and to everybody. So first up, we've got Bringers of Shadow, and this is a card that I really thought was bad, and it took me a while to realize who it was for, which is kind of embarrassing because it's actually kind of obvious. But let's take a look. So the stats, you only get magic and HP, but you get a lot of HP, and that's a decent amount of magic. It's not Trousseau levels of magic, but it's a good magic stat at a max level. The bestowed ability is for fire units only, and it's increased magic 30%. So I saw this, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, Y'shtola's coming back, so this is clearly a card to buff her, and I got stuck in that mindset, but there's obviously other units that will use this. And then the party ability is to increase the attack of your allies by 50%, which is really high. That's the same level that Ifrit gets, so that's pretty good. And then later on, we might get this fire units only level 99 buff, increase pierce resistance 20 for fire allies, which is really good for sure. If that's what it is, and if that's how that all goes down. You can check out my video about those elemental buffs if you want. But anyway, who is this for? Well, this actually works on Rain, Adelard, and Y'shtola, and I mean there's some SRs and stuff, but Rain, this is huge for him. So he gets a 30% magic boost for his damage, he gets a bunch of HP, he gets the magic from the actual card itself, and then you know, you can pair him with two physical attackers and they get a 50% attack boost. So I actually really like this card on Rain specifically, and you would use this if your Rain is not going to be a super tanky Rain. Well, he's still going to be pretty tanky against magic, but he could be a more offensive Rain. He could be a jamming thrust Rain where he's not the main tank, and this would be a really solid card for him while still buffing up the rest of your party. If you have Dwayne as your main tank, he's got really high base attack, then you have Rain giving him a bunch of attack, and Rain is going to be more powerful. My JT boys, we could sub Cecil out and put Dwayne in, and then have the JT boys with this card, and that could actually be still pretty good. And then it gets better, hopefully, maybe. If we ever get Summer Ketone, then she is a mage class, and she would also benefit from this card, and would be, and similarly could be paired with some physical attackers as well. So, you know, this card isn't as bad as I first thought. It is incredibly niche though. So for comparison's sake, we've got Ifrit here, and Ifrit is going to give you not as much HP, but it's going to give you an attack stat. It kind of also has a fire units only ability in that it gives fire attack up as the bestowed. Now, if somebody had a fire spell and they weren't fire element, they could still take advantage of that bestowed ability, but it's pretty much the same as the Bringers of Shadow in that, you know, you're not going to get be able to use that on most units. And then the party ability, again, 50% attack. So really, if you have Ifrit maxed, you can feel pretty safe about not getting the other card unless you really like Rain. Now here's a card that I never thought was bad, and I actually use this card all the time at 2-star, and this is the Scions of Shadow card. So it's a really cool hybrid card. It gives you a bunch of attack and a bunch of magic, and then, you know, not a lot of HP. The bestowed ability is Dark Resistance, which is certainly a useful ability, and then the party ability is Increased Light Attack, and it's really great in that, like, all these elemental boosts generally have a pretty strong party ability at low levels, so it's still I think very usable at 2 stars. However, you're going to want to get this to max if you are planning on using a mono light party, and we get the same elemental boosts, because the future buff for it is dark resistance 20 for all your light allies, and that's really, really big. So this card is an obvious huge boon if you have light units that you use. So for example, for me, I use Mashery, I use Cecil and Ramza. If you're going to be building your Thancred, if you use your Warrior of Light, your Engelbert, whatever, there's so many units that can use this. And then later on, you can use this with Yuna, with Sakura. And the cool thing about it is it works well on attacking units because it has 141 attack. It works great on magic unit because it gives 127 magic. And then it's even better on Ramza because he uses some attacking skills, he uses some magic skills. He gets them both from this card. This really is a great card for him. So I really do enjoy this card, and it's definitely a good get if you're going to be working with a light party. Now, we do have a card that's very similar. We have Red Chocobo, and Red Chocobo, it gives you, it's more for a mage. So you get your increased magic for your bestowed, which is fine, and then it has more of a magic stat on the actual stats for the card, and you get some light attack as well. So this is definitely not nearly as good as Scions of the Shadow, but it is a pretty good placeholder, especially if you're not going to level Scions of the Shadow. So if you have a max Red Chocobo and you're trying to save, then you could make that budget choice to just stick with the Red Chocobo, but that's really our only comparison. So here's another card that I thought a couple months ago wasn't really worth looking at. It's the Shadowbringers card, and you can see, it's got some attack, some HP. Bestowed ability gives you dark attack up and then decreases your light resistance, and the party ability increases your dark resistance by 15%. So you all know now why this card is suddenly relevant, giving your entire party 15% dark resistance, and then you could put the Moogle, the Christmas Moogle on someone to give another 15 bestowed, and then all of a sudden that person has 30% dark resistance, and you're going after all these dark teams, and that could be good. You can't underrate having elemental resistance as a party ability. That's really solid. The bestowed ability is very specific, but if you put that on Dwayne, well, then he gets the 20 dark attack. I mean, sure, you just can't, you have to be careful with the light teams because he's going to be pretty weak to light, but I don't know. I think this could even be good in the mirror match, dark versus dark, and then, any of your dark units have this card equipped. It's still an MR card, but if it swings that matchup in your favor, it could be interesting. So again, this is something, it's going to be a real, a personal choice on whether you get these cards, but there's certainly a case to be made for them. And now if you are going to use this with mono dark, it's going to get a increased strike resistance later on for the dark units, and that's fine. So now you're asking yourself, you're wondering, Mysidia, should I pull these cards? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go through the pros and cons, and we're going to figure this out, me, you, possibly others if more than one person watches this. So pros for the Bringers of Shadow: it's going to be a really good card for Rain, and then I guess Adelard and Y'shtola and Summer Ketone if we get her. It has a decent magic stat, and then it's possibly a great future level 99 ability. And if you are absolutely sold on having a mono fire party, which is where I might be leaning right now for my future, I don't know. I'm kind of should I go light? Should I go fire? I think it'd be fun to go fire. Then this could be a really solid card for you as well. And then the cons, Ifri does the same thing. I'm also going to put limited as a con, and it's just because you can't build it halfway. For the most part, you want to build the whole thing. It's a little bit of a stressor, so that's a con. But really the biggest con is how niche this card is, in that you're only going to be able to use it in a handful of compositions, or if you don't put Rain in your party, then you're not going to use this card. So you have to be really sold on Rain, unless we get another fire casting unit at some point. Then for Scions of Shadow, well, the pros, it's very strong abilities for light units. The hybrid stats are super flexible for, you can put this on whatever unit you want. And then if that future 99 ability holds, then it's going to be a must-have card for mono light teams, at least going up against the dark teams. And then, it's limited. And it's very specific to light element, so if you haven't built light units, then you're not going to want this card. So that's kind of, where it is. And then Shadowbringers, well, you know, it's got the dark resist and the party effect. That's always strong. Lots of dark units in the meta. I don't see that going away. And it could be good in the dark versus dark mirror match. But otherwise, it has MR stats. The attack's actually not that bad. The attack's not that bad. The bestowed ability is very specific, and you could lose value if you don't use that on a dark unit, obviously. And then it's limited, and then the small drawback, but with a light resist. But you know, that's not a killer drawback for me personally. But when we look down or look at it all, I have to say no to our fire card. Again, there's a specific case where you pull for this card, and you know, I might even do it. I might pull for it. I'm still making my mind up. I think if I pull for it, that is a clear sign, you know, that I'm going mono fire and I'm not looking back. And then the other option is that I pull the middle card here and I go for my light team. So, and that card, again, that's a maybe, because if you have light units, yeah, if you have a lot of light units, you probably should build this card. And the same thing with our Shadowbringers in the far right there. If you are seriously worried about dark teams, or you have a dark team and you want to, you know, tech against other dark teams, then this is a card for you. But otherwise, there's so many good things coming up that you might want to wait. Now here's the thing, there's so many people that are saying, I'm not going to pull until FF10, blah blah blah. But I think most people are talking about units. VCs are pretty good investments. I think these VCs in particular are pretty good investments for the people that will use their specific uses. So not just a general investment for every player, but for the people that are going to use these are all solid investments. But for the most part, this can be a banner that a lot of players can skip if these just don't apply to their accounts specifically. So remember, you need to make your own assessment and then make your own decision. All right, we'll see you guys next time.